centre city. I said no. All right, it's passed. Thank you very much. We're going to go on to item 13, which is the regional deals. Somewhere I've got something to say about this. The regional deal, which is sort of how we go from slogan to action. It's a long title for a step in the way we work with central government and how we treat each other with mutual respect. We've already got a deal on water reform and Watercare's balance sheet separation, and we've got a deal on transport so we get control of our roads. And the government has also announced their share of level crossing removal, so we're getting quite a few wins on the border with Wellington, although I don't like going there much. The Committee for Auckland found that Auckland isn't doing as well as we should in innovation, so there's room to improve there, as well as to work together with housing, transport, environment, and Auckland being a gateway to the world. I spoke to the Minister of Local Government yesterday about this, Simon Watts, and he was quite well informed and seemed to be reasonably good to work with. Max, you and your team have done a lot of work on this document. It's a pretty good document actually. So take us through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Purpose of this item is to seek your endorsement of the content of the proposal to government for a regional deal. The suggested proposal is on Nexus. It wasn't at the beginning when the agenda was published, but it is now on Nexus and is summarised in the paper. Given where we're at with the day, we will try and keep this presentation very brief. That's the deal I'll do with you, Mayor. We'll keep it brief. And I think, so Megan and I will tag team a bit, I think. We'll try to give you a bit of context, summarise the key aspects of what's been put in the proposal, and then we'll crack on with questions. Megan will do the first section, if it works. There we go.
Thank you, Max. The Mayor's done an excellent intro, actually, which will shorten our intro, therefore. So, again, the background to this deal, the government has offered all regions, and so in this case it's Auckland, but in other parts of the country there will be multiple councils coming together, forming a region and working together then on a proposal, on a set of ideas to improve their region. So for us, it's just us in Auckland. We have quite deliberately, and as we've spoken to you, lent into and used very much the language of the government that we've heard particularly this year, economic growth and productivity. And so Auckland is New Zealand's only international city. It has its, about 40% of GDP and about 30-odd% of the population. If anything, if the government wants to make real progress and step change in the sense of productivity and economic growth, it will need to happen in Auckland. And so that's the premise of the document you see before you. It also leans heavily on the Mayor's manifesto that he put out just at the beginning of the government's term. So that just shows you the background to the deal. The three objectives from the government are building economic growth, delivering connected and resilient infrastructure, and improving the supply of affordable and quality housing. So that's really our focus in the document. And just a very quick time frame for you. We're right at the right-hand side now. We started work on this last year by, right at the end of the year, formalising our request and saying, yes, we're going to put a proposal together. And so January and February this year, staff have been working on it. We have taken the political working party through it, which was open to all councillors and local board chairs. And so a number of you were involved in that. We really appreciate the feedback. You've really helped to form up this document for us. Phil also called together a group of Auckland leaders who have particular interest and are really motivated in this area. So they also helped us providing feedback, giving us ideas. And again, that's been very helpful. So today, assuming you approve this, if there are any changes, we'll make those, and we need to submit that by the end of day tomorrow to the government, and we will be able to do that, no problem.
Thank you, Megan. Briefly on where we've got to with the proposal, we tackled this, and I suppose there are three key areas we're trying to address. One, the why Auckland? Why would the government want to do a deal with Auckland? Second was how we think the deal should work, the nature of the relationship that Auckland Council was seeking with central government, and then the third was the priorities that we thought we should focus on, reflecting both the government's priorities and council's and Auckland's priorities. It's important to emphasise as well the government's request that this proposal be light touch and primarily based on existing work. So they didn't want us, and I think rightly didn't want us going and creating something new, but focusing on existing priorities and existing work that happened, and that's what we've done within the time frame we've put together the case based on that. So in terms of the why, Megan has already touched on this. Certainly not going to summarise this whole slide, but what we arrived at with the help of the political reference group and the help of the leaders group that Megan talked about was this idea that Auckland as a major international city provides a productivity dividend, has a productivity premium on the rest of New Zealand, and enabling and unlocking growth in Auckland will ultimately lead to higher productivity, higher growth, and higher living standards for Aucklanders, but as well the whole nation will benefit from that. And leveraging off the existing advantages that Auckland has, which are listed there, and a key part of that is the fact that Auckland, as the international city, is the major gateway city in terms of international travellers, immigration, investment, and trade. And those are things that benefit the whole country. It's important to just focus on those positives. Auckland, as a fast-growing region, suffers from some constraints and some growing pains as well, and needs tools to be able to address those constraints. And so there's the pitch as well for the need to unlock some of those challenges that Auckland faces, and the benefits ultimately that will flow to the rest of the country if you're able to unlock those challenges in Auckland. Challenges like congestion, housing unaffordability. There is really good evidence that those in particular harm Auckland's living standards and growth, and harm the country as a result. So that's the why. The how is really important too, and that was a very strong emphasis from the Mayor and from the political reference group that this is not going to, they didn't want us putting forward just a list of projects, a list of things that ribbons could be cut on, but actually wanted to propose a fundamentally different relationship with central government and Auckland Council, reflecting the original intent of the super city, and that's something that reflects our long-term plan as well. So the three key things we've got up there is around aligned objectives with government. So through the deal, agreeing on some measurable, hard objectives that we're going to work together with the government on. Integrated long-term planning. We already have agreement with the government to work on an integrated transport plan, and legislation is expected on that, but there's also a need to work together on the regional spatial plan, and something, this, given the conversation we've just had recently, the need for that plan to be robust and not subject to constant relitigation. So there's an element there of council putting something on the table, which is that we are prepared, we would be prepared to work with the government on that regional spatial plan, but there's a quid pro quo as a result. There's something that the council gets, which is a stronger and more robust spatial plan for Auckland that's not subject to relitigation. And the third thing is equally important, which is then empower. If you've got objectives and you've got joint planning, you need to empower the region to get on and achieve those objectives with new funding and financing tools with bespoke and specific solutions to Auckland. So moving away from one-size-fits-all approach that sometimes we find in our relationship with central government. The other enabling ideas are really important too, and I'm not going to summarise them all because I promised I wouldn't, so I'm just going to move on. The next, and then we had the key priorities. Again, not going to summarise them. Each of them, what we have is important, that we didn't just go straight to what is the new fancy thing that we want to put in the deal. We want to address what's happening already. In each case, there's a number of things the council can do to unlock growth, but we need, and we'll focus on those areas where we're looking for change from the government, things that we need from them in order to enable Auckland to unlock growth, and then we've given a priority initiative in each case. So that the 5 areas are housing, transport, innovation, the gateway to the world concept, which sort of encompasses immigration, tourism, trade, as well as the cultural relationship with the rest of the world, and then the outstanding natural environment and harbours. So those are the 5 things. I'm not going to talk any longer, Mayor, and we're very happy to answer any questions on that, and of course also receive final suggestions for change, noting that we have to submit this tomorrow.
Councillor Hills, question?
Thanks, and sorry to beat this drum all the ways. There's only one mention of climate change. First of all, I just want to say this is amazing, like I said in the workshop. This is really great work. But our discussion in that workshop, I said, we just discussed $2 billion payouts due to climate, and, you know, we've got Kalupa and other things in here, that those pests are only here because of the warming waters. Could we just beef up how we're going to work with the government, both on mitigation and adaptation, a bit more? I know there is mention of the adaptation projects that we could work with the government on, but it just needs to be beefed up in the environment section or something. Economic section as well, but yeah. Everything else, I don't want to
do
overshadow.
that, Councillor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councillor Henderson, please.
Yeah, thanks. This is excellent work. Councillor Hills mentioned one of the things I was going to say. But I'm just looking at the report here around housing, and it says reducing housing supply constraints in Auckland could increase NZ GDP by 0.9 to 1.8%. That's pretty stunning. Do you have any sort of reason for that? What's the factors that go into that GDP calculation?
Yeah, we do. So that is based on a report. The key thing that underpins that is that the housing unaffordability in Auckland, what it does is it causes people to move out of Auckland, people who would otherwise be in Auckland, and because Auckland is more productive than the rest of New Zealand, and because it benefits from greater agglomeration benefits in terms of bringing businesses and people together, having more people in your major international city will ultimately make the country wealthier and more productive.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you, Mayor.
Next question from Councillor Fletcher, please.
I also want to congratulate everyone who's brought this together and thank you for the work. Given that there is now a maturity in understanding that there needs to be bipartisan support for infrastructure plans more generally, what are we able to do to ensure that this is going to enjoy cross-party support as this goes forward? Because we don't want it to become put in jeopardy if there's a change of government at some point in the future. We need to have the confidence that this is going to be an enduring situation.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's a really important point. Obviously, in responding to the framework, we've responded to the priorities that this government has set, but we've included the council's priorities in that, and I think that's something that it's an important point that we'll take up with the mayor as well around socialising these ideas with other parties.
Councillor Fletcher, please.
My question is responded to, thank you.
Well done. Councillor Walker.
Sure, I can't actually get Nexus right now, unfortunately, but I've just got a question around a few items, and they go to what other countries do in respect of some of these items. First off, in terms of transport, I know we've got time of use charging, but there's no mention of smart intersections. You know, other cities have got them. They're intelligent, they're fast, they can be put in progressively, they're economic. That's the best single thing we could do to improve flows. Other cities do it. So why can't we have that? We've had presentations on that by Mike Rudge, for example. Secondly, don't have any problem with dealing with the level crossings, but the technique that lots of other cities use around this is they lift the lines up. They have prefabricated structures that can be put in place very fast. They're economical. And the last thing is just around the bed-night levy. Other cities, other countries have an all-of-country approach rather than just something that's specific to Auckland. The government's working on this. Can we get behind what the hotel industry is doing and the government is doing, rather than coming up with something uniquely different ourselves? So my question is, can we incorporate those things, and are they implicit in what we've got? Because, as I say, I can't get Nexus right now. Must be the technology.
Thank you, Councillor. I think just taking your questions in turn on terms of smart intersections, the full document does speak to what Auckland can do, and it mentions continuing to optimise the local transport network and make it smarter. So I think that is encompassed in that. What we've put up there are the key things that we're asking the government to do, and I'm not sure if there's anything we specifically need the government to do to enable that in Auckland. So, but it is captured in the fuller document, I believe. The point about the midnight visitor levy, I think we are in the proposal when we are agnostic as to whether it is a national or a regional solution. So I don't think there's any problem with how we're pitching it. We want a midnight visitor levy. It's a matter, I think, for the government and for others to manage how that is, whether that's a regional or national solution. Does that answer your questions? In terms of the level crossing removal, outside my area of expertise, Councillor, I think what we speak to here is the need to roll out a level crossing removal, a comprehensive program to remove congested and dangerous level crossings in Auckland. And I think, again, it's agnostic as to exactly how to do that, but we can look at those other ways.
Talks to the solution we want rather than the precise, methodology.
Councillor Ferry, please.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on the level crossing stuff, because if we could maybe have that slide, that would be helpful. Obviously there's been an announcement in between last time we workshopped this and since the advisory group did, and what we're looking at today. And I just wanted to clarify that what we're seeking in this goes beyond what was announced recently. I'm particularly concerned about the Western Line, when what was announced recently only applies to the Southern and one of the Eastern Line crossings. So just wanting to clarify that we are asking for a much larger, more comprehensive program than what was announced recently. That's the understanding, yes?
Yes, absolutely. So broader over time and a location. Yes, that kind of the whole thing is what we're proposing here. It's not what was announced a few days ago. Just to also let you know, you do have Councillor Baker's committee has a workshop, I think it's next week, on it as well. So we can just make sure that we describe what was announced what that means for us and, what we're talking about here as well.
Great, and I think it is really important that we are quite agnostic, I think was the word Max used before, about some of the ways to solve this. What we're seeking, my understanding is what we're seeking through this is actually an agreement that we'll work together on stuff and that government will come to the party with some of the resources, as opposed to this is precisely step by step how we'll do this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Happy to move, Mr Chair, and Councillor Williamson will second.
Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the updates to this, Max and Megan. It's starting to shape up really well. One area that I did reflect on, and I'm sorry this is coming a bit late, but I think we've canvassed this. Probably if I ask the Chief Executive, we've got a motion on our books to undertake or look at the merits with government on a review of the 2009 establishment legislation, that is the Auckland Council establishment legislation. And my question to the Chief Executive, is there merit in including that in the Auckland deal, given that it is, we've discussed that as a council, there's a resolution on the books. Question to you, Chief Executive.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I think the answer is yes. I think it's that idea is entirely consistent with the theme in this regional deal proposal, which is, a reset in the relationship and enablement of Auckland Council to do what it needs to do in the ways that it needs to do it, and we've talked about different dimensions of that. So if the meeting's comfortable, I'd be more than happy to pick that up in the final edit of this document and make it explicit. That would not be a problem.
So that's a resolution from our long-term plan decision making to go to government, ask them to look at a review of the Auckland legislation. So Mayor, I'm just discussing the merits of including the review of the Auckland Council establishment legislation, and the Chief Executive saying that there's merit in that. And can I maybe go to Megan and Max? What part would you insert that into? I mean, it's just a really brief sentence or two, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think it is, I have to now say that I think it's the merit in. Boss has said so, but I also agree, and I think it fits into kind of the how, right? How we're going to do this. So we speak already about empowering Auckland and legislative change being part of that. So part of that is also working on whether we've got our legislation for Auckland Council right, and I think that fits neatly into the current
If
framework.
that could be accommodated, I think it's a good move. The other part to that, there was media today on government intending to introduce a bill for 4-year terms for central government elections. Now, we've not had a discussion about 4-year terms, I don't think, and we don't have a resolved position on it. But I'm just wondering, should that be addressed, at least in for the Auckland context, where we don't have regional, and district councils or city councils, we've got a unitary authority. Is it a bit too, without discussion, introduction on that one? Is that a bit too hard, that one?
Well, I think my guidance would be that we should have a specific conversation about the council's position on that issue. I would predict if there was a change in the national election cycle that there'll be then the debate will flow automatically from that into local government, or we'll have years in which both elections are taking place. So I have my own views. I won't stray into that space at the moment, but I would suggest we return to that when the time's right in terms of a formal position.
That's kind of a nationwide thing rather than particularly for Auckland anyhow. they're not going to have votes in Auckland in a different year from the rest of the world. So, but I get the point. Councillor,
Yeah, just coming back to the bipartisan agreement issue that was brought up earlier, because obviously, my concern, it's a really well-written document, and I think, there's so much that's gone into it. But the issue for me still for Auckland is having a long-term infrastructure plan where we have funding from any government that's in. I know that you've raised legislation change, and when we look at other state governments around the world that have that infrastructure money locked in, I'm obviously just coming from that perspective of have we captured enough to argue the point of having a long-term funding vision between Auckland, well, not just Auckland Council, obviously we could set the scene for the rest of the country, but some kind of regional funding that would be long-term.
Through the chair, thank you. And again, without getting into the exact way you would do it, we think that really is clear at the beginning. Fundamentally we want a different relationship, and fundamentally we want agreed objectives and long-term planning and long-term funding and financing. So I think if you look at the overarching ideas there, that is all encompassed, and there's a bit more detail in the document itself. I think also to remember, the government calls this a light touch proposal. It's probably not as light as it could be, but we wanted to give it a really good crack. So if the government does choose us and say, yes, Auckland, we'd like to have a conversation with you, there's opportunity then to get a bit more specific, a bit more detailed maybe about exactly what we might be looking for, and who we can talk to, whether the government may want to include a bipartisan approach. That's certainly what we would like, but that will kind of come should the government pick this up and say, yes, we want to have a conversation.
okay, that's the questions. I've got a couple myself, Max. What can we do to strengthen the bed night visitor levy idea in the papers, assuming the public say during consultation that they do want big events like America's Cup State of Origin, big concerts, things like that? Or do you think we've got it in there hard enough?
Yeah, thanks, Mia. I think, I think what you've just said is probably something that we could add, which is the point around giving a bit more tangible examples of what sort of events could be possible if we had the midnight visitor levy. So that's something that we could change in the edit.
Yeah, but rather than explain it, just show what's going to be missed out and who we're going to blame. And the next one, I raised this with the Minister of Local Government yesterday. Is there enough in the proposal about changes to the visitor visa and transit visa settings to encourage more tourists to visit Auckland and allow people and goods to transit through on their way somewhere else?
Thanks, Mia. We do it. So it is in the. It wasn't in the summary slides we just mentioned, but it is mentioned in that concept of gateway to the world. One of the things we're looking for from the government is Auckland having been consulted in a discussion with us about those sorts of rules, but very specifically enabling the things you just mentioned, which is transit through Auckland and enabling the linkage, Auckland to be a hub between other regions, including South America and Southeast Asia. So that is mentioned in the proposal.
Well, just read it again and see if it's mentioned enough, because it has a direct impact on and this growth mantra that we're hearing. You don't get growth without getting people in easily, and so. And then the last bit, you talked about various people that might move out of here. Is there anything there to get the 501s to move out? I don't suppose it's the right place for that, but I mean, we're worried about moving out. Good people can encourage bad people to move out.
We might leave that for your direct discussions with the ministers, Mayor.
Fair enough. I just thought I'd liven things up a bit by that statement.
Thanks, Mia. Actually, just going back to your previous comment. We'll have a look at whether we can strengthen that. I think one of the points we do make around the midnight visitor levy, connecting those two ideas, is that tourism brings people and enables the business case for airlines to come to Auckland, and that enables trade. So there's a link between tourism and trade, which we've tried to
Well,
bring
there's
together.
absolutely, there's a proven link between the transit visa and China Southern not coming through here to South America. They will put that service on once that's removed. And that's got to be blunt in there so that people trying not to read something or other they don't want to read about have to read it. Last question comes from Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you. I thought this idea was really, really good, and then I saw the deal is with the Department of Internal Affairs. But anyway, I think you have to be careful when we talk about growth and productivity that we actually know what we're talking about here. Growth and productivity are not the same thing. Anyone can do growth, and by immigration policy in recent years, the government has made the economy look better, and with the encouragement of councils like Auckland, by encouraging immigration, so we have growth. It's easily done. Productivity is a completely different matter, and that's what we haven't done at all, and we're failing quite badly in that, I have to say. And look, we've had these. I think it's important that we take this very, very seriously, because there is a tendency to overhype things in the public sector nowadays. You know, we've had the Auckland Plan 001, we've had the Auckland Unitary Plan, the Auckland Plan 002. Before that, we had the Knowledge Wave, and now we have this exciting sounding deal. But actually, it all comes to nothing in terms of what's been promised in terms of economic development and productivity and sustainable management for that matter. And so we have a real problem with productivity here in Auckland, and I think I have to say, given the economic power of the council, we're part of the problem. The CRL, which I was an original champion for, must have completely sandbagged our productivity and the country's productivity for years to come, given how much it costs to 3.4 kilometre couple of tunnels and the time, and that's still unfinished. Coming down to something small and local, but I think is very, very general across the city. Wellesley Street has been dug up for 6 months now. How many? 6 months, at least, probably longer actually, dug up. And when I came up from the ferry today, it's still dug up. And so what would be the productivity? And we're funding all that. What would be the productivity involved in that? It would be very, very, very poor. I just think this is a good concept, but I think if we take the same old approach of overhyping, and I'll tell you, when I came to Auckland as a young person, Aucklanders, the average Aucklander, used to skite, used to brag about Auckland. Yeah. But the councils, the Auckland City Council and the boroughs and other councils and the ARA, they didn't brag at all. They just got on with the work, and they were actually productive. So we're in the opposite space now. So I urge you, okay, I support this, but you know, all the stuff we're talking about, be careful that this is not just more hype, that we are serious people tackling a serious problem because we have to, because as you point out, this is the biggest part of the country, but it's, in terms of economic performance, it's failing, and that should change. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Thank you, Max and Megan. You can revert. I don't know if we need any discussion, because some of those questions sound like discussion to me. But then again, I'm old-fashioned. So I'm going to put this to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary. Thank you very much. Excellent work. Good stuff. And we're moving on. We've now got a submission on the water bill. I met with the